Since February is the month of love, today I am here to share some books I love about love. Hello book friends, I'm Jen and welcome to my reading life and welcome to another in my series of favorite books. And today I'm going to share books that I love featuring love, which aren't romance novels. And I'm holding up this cute little heart bookmark that my son made in school last week, and so adorable. I'm using it in one of the books I'm going to share with you today. But I thought it would be fun, since it's Valentine's Day and Valentine's month, to share with you some books that feature love stories or romance or some kind of love. Some of these are a little bit out of the box, but bear with me because I have a reason for sharing each and every one of these books. As always, I really do enjoy sharing books with you that I don't often hear talked about or that I feel are a little bit under the radar. And while some of these may be familiar to you, I think you may find one or two that you haven't heard of or definitely haven't read yet. But let's just get straight into the books. First up is a book whose title you may know and whose author you definitely know, and that is The Blue Castle by L.M. Montgomery. This is a standalone book. It's not part of the Anne of Green Gables series or the Emily of New Moon series. And in this, we follow Valentine Sterling, and she lives with her mother and her aunt, who really rule the roost in Valency's life. Don't let her do much of anything. She is, I think she's 29. Yes, she's 29 years old. She's never been in love. She's never really experienced life in any way. She lives mostly in books and in her imagination. And then one day a doctor comes and gives her a diagnosis which changes Valency's life. And suddenly she decides that she is going to live just for herself. And that's exactly what she does. And she may find some romance along the way, but I really like this book because I also think it is about falling in love with life, falling in love with yourself, finding yourself. I think it has some truly wonderful elements. I read this book in just over a day and I absolutely loved it, and it is for sure a book I'll be rereading over and over again in the years to come because I just adored Valency's story, and I think this is a book full of love and hope, and if that's what you need in your life right now, definitely give The Blue Castle a try. Next up is a book which I have talked about here on my channel before, but I don't often hear it talked about anywhere else, and I absolutely adore this book, and that is The Red Notebook by Antoine Lorrain. This is translated from the French, and in this we follow Laurent Letellier. And he is a bookseller, and one day walking down a Parisian street, he comes across an abandoned handbag, and he takes the handbag and takes it home with him and pulls out its contents, and there's nothing in it that reveals who the handbag belongs to. There's no identification, but he sets out on a mission to find the woman who owns this handbag. And inside the handbag is this little red notebook, which is full of observations about life, her thoughts, just all kinds of interesting jottings, and Laurent really becomes enamored of who this woman might be, and we follow along to discover, does he find her? Who is she? What happens? And I have mentioned before that I think if you enjoy the movie While You Were Sleeping, definitely give this book a try. It is a French version of that in a way, but it is full of love and romance, and what's more romantic than Paris? So I highly recommend The Red Notebook as a February read. Next up is a book that was popular a number of years ago when it first came out, but I don't often hear it talked about these days. And this was a book that was actually pressed into my hands by a local bookseller who found out that I love Laurie Colwin and said, if I love Laurie Colwin, then I need to give this author a try because she is like a modern day Laurie Colwin, and that is Katherine Heiny. And this is Early Morning Riser. And in this one, we follow Jane, and Jane falls in love with Duncan, and Duncan is a bit of a ladies' man, and he has an ex-wife and he's got a best friend. And if you enjoy stories about small town life, about sort of those little small moments in everyday life that we all experience, from love and friendship and heartbreak and loneliness and finding yourself and all of the wonderfulness that makes up life, then I absolutely recommend Early Morning Riser. Next up is a book that I think if you want to add a little breath of spring into your life, I highly recommend this book, and that is The Garden of Small Beginnings by Abby Waxman. And in this, we follow Lillian, and Lillian is a textbook illustrator, and she is a widow. Her husband was killed in a car accident. She has 2 young daughters, and she is put on a project where she is going to be illustrating a textbook that is filled with plants. And so her boss signs her up for a gardening class so that she can get some kind of hands-on experience and knowledge of plants. And this gardening class is going to change Lillian's life, and she meets an eclectic host of people in this class, from the man who runs the class to all of the people in the class, and it's really a lovely little slice of life with a little bit of romance thrown in also. And we just watch Lillian as she navigates being a single mother and finding her sort of found family. And I fell in love with Abby Waxman's writing in this book, and I definitely recommend it. Next up, you're going to get a sneak preview of 2 books that were 5-star reads for me from February. And I read a little duology by one of my favorite authors, D.E. Stevenson. And those 2 books are Belle Lamington and Fletcher's End. And in Belle Lamington, we meet our main character, Belle Lamington. She is a young woman in her 20s. She lives in London. She works for a shipping company, and she's pretty much all alone in the world. Her parents died when she was younger, and she was raised by her aunt, who was very loving and kind, but her aunt has since passed away. So Belle has had to leave the countryside, which she adores, and move to London to a little flat. And she really misses the countryside, and so she has a little balcony off of her flat, and she turns it into a little bit of a garden oasis. And this garden brings one man into her life, and he is an artist, and he paints a picture of her, and they develop a bit of a relationship, and we sort of follow that. But we also follow Belle's life at the shipping company. She has been promoted, much to the chagrin of some of the other women working in the office, and so there is some antagonism going on there. But she really loves her boss. She really does enjoy her work, and she's very good at it. And we just follow Belle as she navigates life. In the midst of all this, she also runs into an old school friend, Louise, and Louise's father, Dr. Armstrong, and develops a friendship with them. She goes to stay with them at their home, and we just kind of follow the trials and tribulations of Belle's life. This book also features some recurring characters from some of D.E. Stevenson's other books, namely The Music in the Hills and Winter and Rough Weather. So it was very fun to visit some of those characters again. We get lovely descriptions of Scotland as well. And I won't give too much away about Fletcher's End, because I really think you should read Belle Lamington first and find out what happens, because it was actually kind of a bit of a surprise to me. But Fletcher's End features a wonderful, wonderful home that we see being renovated and set up. One of the things I have recently sort of had an aha moment about in terms of what I enjoy in novels is that I really like that sort of a setting up of place, of location, of the worlds that the characters inhabit, and I really like to see that being built by the author. I know a lot of times people don't enjoy first novels in series because there's a lot of like quote unquote world building going on, and while I'm not a huge fan of where we often use that term in sort of sci-fi and fantasy novels, but I think we could also use world building to describe other books as well in any kind of series where we have to be set up to get to know these characters and understand them and what their place is in the world they live in. And I have found that I actually really, really enjoy that. And oftentimes first novels in the series are one of my very favorites. And even though Fletcher's End is actually the second book in this little duology, it sort of features those same elements. And though I love Belle Lamington, I don't know, because of the whole setting up of this house, I just feel like maybe Fletcher's End has just a little bit more of my heart because of that. But this duology, 5 stars, hands down a new favorite. It's not currently in print. I listened to the audiobook, which was fantastic. Highly recommend. I think you can get copies of the ebook. I will link what I can in the description box below. As I will link all of these books, I always link all the books I mention in my videos in the description box below. But I would love to see this little duology brought back into print. Fingers crossed, maybe Dean Street Press can get a hold of the rights to do that, or another publishing company. I don't really care. I'd just like to have physical copies of them. Now we're going to move on a little bit from novels that feature love and romance into a few different books. This first one is very much a book which I think is perfect for Valentine's month. I read it when I first received it, which was a gift from my mom, of course. But when I pulled it out to talk about it during this video, I dipped into it and then I just decided I was going to reread it. And enough with the suspense, Jen. That book is Love Letters, and this is an anthology of passion by Michelle Lovrick. And in this book is a collection of excerpts from letters throughout the ages from all different people from history, and it is broken into different categories. We have admiration, declaration, revelation, adoration. It goes on and on through devotion, obsession, frustration, felicitations, domestication, and then now and forever is the final category. And because you guys know how much I love a book that has things you can pull out of it, this is one of those books. So it does have some of the letters and quotes are in little envelopes, and they've been recreated to look just as they did when they were written by the author's own hand. And you know, I love that. Some of them are quite challenging to read, which is why it is really nice that they are all transcribed at the back of the book so that you can read all of the items that are printed in those little letter envelopes. And this is just such a lovely, lovely book. And I'm going to read you just one of the short little quotes because I think it is just perfect for Valentine's Day. This quote is from Catherine Mansfield to John Middleton Murray, and this is from January 27th, 1918. My love for you tonight is so deep and tender that it seems to be outside myself as well. I am fast shut up like a little lake in the embrace of some big mountains. If you were to climb up the mountains, you would see me down below, deep and shining and quite fathomless, my dear. You might drop your heart into me and you'd never hear it touch bottom. I love you. I love you. Good night, oh bogey, what it is to love like this. If you enjoy books with quotations and excerpts from letters, then I highly recommend Love Letters. My poor cover. So it does have a little envelope on the cover. Unfortunately, my little flap with the seal tore off many, many years ago. But it has this little card in it with this little angel on it. And inside it says, it is not only necessary to love, it is necessary to say so, which is a French saying. And I just love that. I think this is a wonderful, wonderful little book. Very, very lovely. Perfect for Valentine's Day. And my final three books are not books that are about love between two people, but they are books about love in some way. And so I just thought I'd share them. If you're not really in the mood to read a traditional romance, but you want to feel something that invokes love, then I recommend these three. And I haven't talked much about any of these books, so I'm going to share them with you today. For a very sweet, very short little read for all of the book lovers in your life, or yourself, I'm assuming you're a book lover if you're watching this, I highly recommend Book Love. And this is by Debbie Tung. And this is just a little sort of a graphic novel, sort of a comic book, but it is all about books. So on this page, it says some of the best places to read: cozy bed, bathtub, park, beach, public transportation, bookshop, cafe. And then she's got her lovely illustrations. And it's just sweet little comics all about the love of books. And I received this for Christmas a few years ago, and I just sat down and read through it in probably less than an hour. It's just short and sweet and full of the love of books. So if that is something that appeals to you, definitely give book love a try. And then if you've been around here for any length of time, you know that I am a cat lover. I love dogs too, but I have owned cats now for quite a few years. I haven't had a dog since I was quite young. But if you are also a cat lover, then this is the book for you. I'm going to recommend Cat Stories by James Herriot. And this is a collection of stories that James Herriot has told about cats. And many of these are featured in All Creatures Great and Small and the rest of the series, but they are collected here in one volume. So we get to meet all of the different cats that come into James Herriot's life. And my edition has some really lovely illustrations of cats. This is illustrated by Leslie Holmes, and I just love this book. I think this might be the book that I'm going to read after Christmas next year, because since I'm done with the All Creatures Great and Small series, I think I'm going to reread this one because I love cats, and you know, reading about cats after Christmas just sounds lovely. James Herriot talks about animals in such a loving and charming and often hilarious way. So if that's what you're looking for, then definitely give Cat Stories a try. And lastly is a book that speaks to the Anglophile inside of me. I love England. I read lots of books written about, set in England by English authors. And this is a book all about the love of England. And that is Susan Branch's A Fine Romance, falling in love with the English countryside. And this is all about Susan and her husband's first trip to England. They go over on the QE2 because Susan doesn't fly. So they take a ship over to England. It's all about their trip there. And as always, Susan Branch's books are just so beautifully done. She writes them in her own handwriting. They include her illustrations and photographs. And if you love England even half as much as I love England, you will adore this book. And it's full of bookish references. There are recipes. There is music to go along with your journey through the English countryside. And I just love all the little snippets of information that she shares, and she visits some really wonderful literary places in England, from Beatrix Potter's house to Jane Austen's, and it is just so fun to armchair travel alongside Susan and fall in love with England right along with her, even if you can't go there physically. And this truly is a love affair book. This is actually the third book in the trilogy of Susan Branch's memoirs, but I actually read it first. But I think you can absolutely read this on its own as a standalone book, and you can then go back and read her other books and not feel like you've missed out on anything. But if you do want to read them in order, then start with A Fairy Tale Girl and then move on to Martha's Vineyard, Isle of Dreams, and then finish up with A Fine Romance. I think all of them are lovely, and all of them feature love and romance in some way. And so if that's what you're looking for, you can't go wrong with Susan Branch. But this is the one I highly recommend, and made me fall in love with Susan Branch, just head over heels. And that wraps up some of my favorite books about love for this February Valentine's month. I would love to chat with you down in the comments. What are some books you love that feature love or romance? Whether that's love of another person or love of something, maybe it's love in friendship form, whatever it might be. Let's share all the books we love about love down in the comments. I do love chatting with you down there. But if you don't have anything that you'd like to share in the comments, but you'd like to let me know that you were here and that you made it this far in the video, why don't you leave a little heart emoji of some kind since we are talking about love today. I really do appreciate you leaving those emojis down in the comments. Comments really do help my channel, and it's just so lovely for me to know that you are here and that you made it this far. And an extra thanks to those of you who pressed the super thanks button on my last video. I really do appreciate that bit of extra support for my channel. And if you missed it in my 1-year booktube anniversary video, I have started a Patreon account. And if you're interested in having more bookish connection and conversation, I would love to have you join us over there. We are going to be having Zoom calls every month. We are going to do a quarterly read along. You have the opportunity to be the book Jenny of the month. And you'll have to go to Patreon if you want to find out what exactly that means. The link to my Patreon is always in the description box below, as well as in my bio on my main YouTube page. And if you enjoyed this video, if you could hit that like button and subscribe if you aren't already subscribed, I would love to have you join my bookish community. And as always, I'll be back with another video very soon. Bye!